All right, so virtual voices for mental health, that's what we're doing today. And for my part of the talk, I have three basic goals. I want to just like talk to you about our theory to win and like why telling these stories like actually works. And some of the other speakers kind of alluded to that, and I'll give you some concrete examples. Then I'll go through like what your email is actually going to look like and like how you kind of construct your story. And then, I'll just plug like today should be the start of your advocacy, not the end. And I hope you keep in touch and we'll figure out what the next advocacy day looks like. So I'll just put in a plug for that at the end. But one quick thing before I start is whenever I do like a training like this or talk to people about being advocates, I always ask them like, why might you not want to do this? Why might you be hesitant? And if this was a pre-COVID time, if we were all in the same room, I kind of lead a discussion about it. But I can just cut to the chase. And the two main reasons I hear over and over again from people is that, well, I'm not an expert. Like, I don't know the law. I don't know the policy. Like, who am I to be talking to a senator or a congressman? Like, this isn't really my job. And to that, I always tell them, and like, if you forget everything else I say today, I hope you remember this, is that you all are experts on your own story, right? Like, I could talk to Susan for hours and she's still going to be more of an expert on her own story than I am, right? Same for Micah, same for Tawana, same for everyone on this call. So because you're an expert on your own story, you don't have to know like every little in and out of the law or the legislation. You don't have to know the history of the policy or the history of the senator or the representative. What's important is that you know how these issues affect you directly. And if they affect you that way, then chances are they're going to affect thousands of other people that way, often millions. So just focus on what you know, just like be genuine and tell your story. Today we're focusing on telehealth a lot, so just talk about how that affects you. And if it affects you, it's going to affect a lot of people. And we'll talk you through how to make a concrete ask at the end of it. But I want everyone here to feel empowered that you have everything you need to do this work. Like if you have your story, you have everything you need. And the second question I get a lot is, well, does any of this really matter? Is anyone listening? Does us sending these emails or telling these stories actually matter? And like, as you learned from my Affordable Care Act example, it like absolutely matters. And that's because our theory to win is the second one is you bring constituents to their representatives over and over again with specific asks, and that's how you move the needle on your issues. That's how you make change. And my boss often tells me that in order to make change, you need like lots and lots of money or lots and lots of people. And we have the people, right? Like there are so many more of us than people who don't care about these issues. So I'm glad, I think I saw the counter was up to like 50 or 60 people on this call, which is great for something like this. And like there's so many people who care about this. And if you can mobilize them, we can absolutely get people to care about these issues. We can absolutely get our representatives to be responsive to us because that's their job. And if they're not responsive to us, we can find other leaders who will be, right? Like that's another power we wield. So yeah, those are the two main things. Like we have the people, and if you just keep making these asks over and over again, you can actually make change. So there's lots of ways you can do that. So these are like all the advocacy tools in the toolkit, and they're escalating in terms of like what they ask of you. So like obviously the highest ask would be like civil disobedience, like to get arrested, like I mentioned, like that's asking a lot, right? That's, not everyone's going to be comfortable with that. And the lowest threshold is kind of like what we're doing now, sending emails or signing a petition, sending a letter. And if you're more comfortable, if you want to get more engaged, you can make a phone call, actually talk on the phone with someone. Post-COVID, you can actually go and meet someone for an office visit. Bird dogging is in the middle. If anyone's interested in that, I can talk to you about it after, but basically that's talking to a representative at a town hall, at a public event, directly addressing them publicly, on camera about, your issues. And then there's protesting and civil disobedience. And it's important to remember that we're pushing all of these levers at once. It's a ladder in terms of the threshold, but it's not sequential, right? Like all of these things are happening at once. So as we're sending these emails tomorrow, there are other organizations like mine, which actually did civil disobedience this morning on healthcare issues in DC. There are other organizations like the National Institute of Health, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, who are doing these lobby visits and doing bird dogging. So all of these things are happening at once. So I want you to know that what you're doing tomorrow is incredibly important. And just like if you think of a sports team, Lakers won a title last night. I don't know if people are excited. I'm pretty excited about that. People have different roles on the team, right? So some people are going to be doing civil disobedience because that's what they're comfortable with and they're equipped to do. Some people are going to be doing the lobby visits. And what we're doing tomorrow is sending these emails, and they're all equally important. You're pushing all the levers. You're all, functioning as a team. So I just kind of wanted to give you that scope that what you're doing, like you're plugging into a much larger effort. There are organizations across the country working on these bills, working on these issues. So we're doing important stuff tomorrow. Just wanted to make that clear. And then, so what are the ingredients of a good story? We talked a lot today about storytelling. I'm glad that's kind of like a theme everyone is hitting, because it's really the crux of all of this. And I think you start with something personal. You talk about, your personal experience. I know telehealth is kind of the through line through a lot of these bills. So how is that affecting you? Like, what is your particular problem? And then you generalize, because if it's affecting you, it's affecting a lot of people. You're not going to a representative, because there's a hole in your fence, right? You're going to a representative because the water isn't clean, or the air isn't clean, or you don't have access to healthcare. These are societal problems. And then you're making an ask. And the great thing about this event is the IOCDF has made that last part totally easy. Like, we have all the bills, we have the ask, it's all kind of set up. And you're just gonna plug in number one, you're just gonna plug in your personal story. So I know lots of people, this is like your first foray into advocacy. It's going to be really easy. It's going to be comfortable. And I hope it's, the first of many forays for you. I think Stephanie and Will are talking in depth about the bills after me, but here's a little screenshot of them. And this is like the kind of template you'll get in your email. So it has all the bills, and it ends, with the ask, which I guess, yeah, the ask is over here. Please sponsor the following bills. And over here, you're just going to tell your story. So as I mentioned before, this kind of tracks what I mentioned earlier, right? Like, you start with your story, you talk about how it affects everyone, and then you say, like, will you actually support these bills? So I made like a little sample. You don't have to use this if you have other ideas, but an example of one way this could go is you could say, I depend on weekly therapy to manage severe obsessive compulsive disorder, but my insurance will not cover telehealth sessions, and it is not safe for me to see my therapist in person during COVID. I can't afford to pay for therapy out of pocket and still pay rent and keep food on the table for my family. Millions of others like me have been isolating for months during this pandemic, separated from the care they need. We're experiencing a mental health crisis in America, and we need your support. And then comes the ask, please co-sponsor the following bills. And the bills will all be listed. So that's a little sample, and I can share this PowerPoint before we start off tomorrow. People find this helpful. I'm not sure how helpful it is. But yeah, that's just one example of telling your story, and you can plug in as many details as you want. I believe we have an 800 character limit, and this example is about like 420 characters. So you can actually add like almost double this. So that kind of gives you a sense of what you can talk about. But like a concise paragraph is really all you need to do. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I just wanted to remind you of this, because if you're interested after tomorrow in engaging further, like, contact the IOCDF, contact Stephanie. If you want to plug into, the kind of things my organization is doing, let me know. And then before we kick it off, I just wanted to say a few more notes. So those were some tools that were significant. And so before we get started tomorrow, I just wanted to mention like a few things I found in my work is that like I'm kind of driven by this quote from The Great Gatsby, which I don't know if people are familiar with, but the quote is, there is no difference among men of race or intelligence so profound as the difference between the sick and the well. And that's really driven like all my work. I've always been drawn to healthcare work. I think ableism is like the biggest structural problem in America. And I think there's like this misconception that America just like grows gentler over time, like enough time passes and things just get better. And that's not true. Things don't magically get better over time. They get better because people choose to act. And sometimes it's lawyers, sometimes it's teachers or volunteers and activists, but it's people like you on this call, right? People who are directly impacted, who wield the power. And if you use that power, to talk to your representatives over and over again, you can really make change on these issues. So yeah, I saw it happen, with the Affordable Care Act, like I mentioned. I've seen it happen on a variety of other issues, and I'm like confident that, I hope you all feel empowered that what you're doing is important and you can bring about that sort of change tomorrow. Yeah, so I think that's all I had.